Hey, what's going on? You know who it is. It is Bruce Jordan, the Michael Jordan Hotels. And today we got Suzanne with us, and we're going to talk about what's been going on, the changes in the hotel industry pre and post COVID. How are we doing today?
I'm fabulous. I'm excited to be with you this morning in
Same
Charlotte,
here.
North Carolina.
Same here. It's nice and humid. I feel like I'm back in Orlando.
I don't feel it's quite as humid as what we're used to. I feel like it's a little bit drier because my contact lenses are drying on my eyeballs. Just a little bit more than they would at home.
See, I wish I had the luxury of wearing contacts because it's not going to happen. Like my eyes are so bad, you're going to need glass.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you get started in this business? Nobody knows your story. Tell me your story.
Well, if you ever saw the movie Meet the Parents with Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro, go back and do some homework. That's back in 2000. Mm-hmm. From that vantage point, I started cleaning menus, walking the dining room with my aunt in the family restaurant, and really just starting to learn from the ground up. Nice. Really started with my first position as a dessert girl.
Nice.
Making desserts in the back of the restaurant, and then eventually got out to be hostess and did serving and worked in the kitchen and managed the dining room. And so really did that at a very young age. All right, so our sous chef, John DeTore, he actually went to Johnson & Wales. And so he inspired me to look at that as a school and not be a veterinarian. Don't worry, I still have the passion for the animals. I have 2 black labs, 3 birds, and 2 gerbils, and a husband and a son. The zoo is in full force in Sebastian, Florida. But from that vantage point, I really started to think the restaurant aspect of the industry is what I had wanted to do for a long time. Really focused on that. I went for hotel and restaurant management at Johnson & Wales. Went back, tried to work in the restaurant that way, eventually worked with other restaurants as well to see other areas, and eventually got my first hotel in Long Island in New York.
Nice.
The Roslyn Claremont. Started as the mini bar girl in the hotel world. So
okay. Got
to knock on those doors 3 times, moved my heavy cart after I loaded it up and went in, counted my inventory, came out. I love the fact that so much of that is more automated in some levels now.
Yeah.
So you know whether you have to go in or not, but that was not the way it was when I started. And from there, I really started to enjoy hotels, continued at Johnson & Wales. Never thought I was going to go beyond my associate's degree because a long time ago, you only needed an associate's degree.
That's
and
right.
So I worked in residential life. And so there was a lot of transferable skills into how you could leverage that in the hotel world in hospitality. And so really continued on the res life path, went from a resident assistant all the way up to an area coordinator, and then had the opportunity to say, okay, let's move on after I had gotten my master's degree and worked in the city of Boston at the Holiday Inn Select Government Center.
Nice.
That is now a Wyndham hotel, and I started as an assistant guest service manager. And really just, again, starting from the ground up, really learned everything within the hotel world and how it connected. We were a full service hotel, so there was a lot to learn. Brains of the operation is, really how I refer to the hotel world and the front desk as. And just started to say, this is my place. It's not restaurants. I like this more. And so then I had very quickly put in a action plan for myself to say, I want to be a general manager and I want to do it by the time I'm 25, and I'm going to make this happen.
Okay.
And so rotated. I think one of the things I learned from a lot of different folks, but start from the ground up and never ask anyone to do anything I wasn't comfortable with. And I knew if I wanted to be a general manager and a leader, I needed to know what every department was doing and how to do it. And
smart.
And really learn from that. And so for me, that was really important. And I did so. And I'm proud to say that I exceeded my goal. I was general manager at the age of 24.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And I was one of the first female general managers in the city of Boston. So really, it was a great sense of accomplishment that way that I was really proud of. And worked primarily within the Holiday Inn brand of hotels at the time. Eventually we transitioned and it became what we now know as IHG. But the management company I started with was Bristol Hotels and Resorts. So I've got a lot of Bristol hotel friends and family, if you will, that have gone on to do some great things within other hospitality companies. And so it was a great foundation. And Eventually continued. Had a fun, exciting incident in Las Vegas where I fractured my kneecap.
Ooh.
And said, I think I need to reassess life. And so sometimes where debilitating things can happen, you can go the other way. And for me, it was, all right, let's reassess and figure out what we want to do. And I had also really been very interested in training. And so all of my properties, I was the person that did the trainings. And what was great was Amanda Singer was our trainer from IHG at the time. And I loved what she did. I loved how she did it. And just following her train the trainer guides, and I saw that passion and excitement. And so what's that next step for me? Mm-hmm. Could it be hotel executive, CEO, C-suite, something like that? Yeah. Could it be something on the training and the education? And so really started to look at the bigger picture, where myopically in a small property or even within a management company, I was only able to impact the lives of so many under the roof that I had.
Okay.
And how could I expand upon that and do more and create more? And so my first opportunity while I was still a general manager was teaching as an adjunct at Bunker Hill Community College. Got that position at a conference. So conferences are really important, and the networking value is so important to it, because you just never know what's going to happen. And so that was just an adjunct role, but that led into greater opportunities and gave me the confidence of, hey, I can do this and I like this. Although I will tell you that transition was not easy, because I had to cut my pay in half, give up my company car and the insurance.
And the kid and the dog and the gerbil.
No, we didn't have all those yet. But once I got into the teaching and did it full time, that was my next aha, this is it. And my former dean, Caroline Cooper at Johnson & Wales, and a vice president of academic affairs, Jeff Sinise, they sat me down and they said, Suzanne, we see you have leadership potential. You need to pursue this, and you need to go after your PhD.
Oh, wow.
I had my master's. I was good. I was all set. And I was really like, no, I've done enough school. However, there are many institutions that require that terminal degree. And they said, you have lifelong potential in our industry of higher education and academics. So you need to consider this. And so I did, because you listen to Dean Cooper. And so I went on to Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa, and I have earned my PhD in hospitality management. Specifically, I looked at the website TripAdvisor, which now we are much more familiar with. But we looked at the 55 hotels in the city of Boston and the impact that those rating attributes, there are 7 rating attributes for a hotel, how that user-generated content will actually impact the performance indicators, ADR, RevPAR, and occupancy at a hotel. And so that was groundbreaking at that time, because that hadn't been done. And so that was a lot of fun. I don't consider myself a hardcore researcher in academics like many do. I like to do more practical applications and taking what I can learn and glean and transfer that knowledge to our industry partners of how can we better our industry. And so that's always been an important piece of what I've done. And so from there, I worked also at Mount Ida College in Newton. I've worked at Endicott College in Beverly, Massachusetts. Great little spot right out on the water. Really learned some great things there with that team. We did senior thesis and more research with students and what have you. Eventually had the opportunity to move over to Boston University in downtown Boston. And took on some additional leadership roles there as the chair and the coordinator of undergraduate programs, and taught in the graduate program. I've also taught online and in person at Johnson & Wales as a supplemental or as an adjunct. I've also worked at Fisher College as well. So there's been a lot up in the Northeast that I've supported and enjoyed, and really started to see that this is my passion. Prior to COVID, I met my industry friend, Anthony Malcury, and you never know where you will meet people at a conference, because I met him at a conference too, and how that transfers. I'll circle back to that in a hot minute. But COVID certainly made an impact on our industry, and even with teaching. And so our schools truly shut down. And so we went to an LFA model, which was learn from anywhere. We did go eventually back onto campus. I was typically on campus as one teacher and maybe one or two students in the classroom. Everybody else was on Zoom. And again, another pivotal opportunity to reassess one's life. Looked at, well, what else can I do? And so during COVID, No Vacancy Live, the podcast that is available on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, the #1 podcast in hospitality. I know you're getting close, so I'm watching you. But I was following them because they were live at 12 noon every day. And so I was home and just really started to follow what they were saying and just bringing all the stories to the table. And eventually there was an opportunity where I was like, Glenn, do you need some help? And he was like, yes, definitely.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, well, I can only give you 2 or 3 days a week because I'm still teaching, and my classes overlapped with the time that the podcast was, because we're live.
Yeah.
We are live. and so that's really how I got started, because to me, I wanted to work on my LinkedIn network and build who I knew in this industry. And again, thinking about how you can do greater good. And so that's where I got started with them. And eventually Anthony and I just continued to connect, and he's like, I want to teach. And I'm like, no, you don't. Teaching is really hard. But let's look at what we can do, you know? And so I packed up my whole family and we moved down to Florida. And I was at Indian River State College for a short time in the Vero Beach, Fort Pierce area on the East Coast. And worked on their recruitment and their retention and their enrollment, and started a program. And in the meantime, I've had a fantastic opportunity that I really could not pass up. Florida International University, FIU. We are the #6 ranked school in the United States, #31 in the world for hospitality programs. We are, I think, the 2nd or 3rd largest program. And so when Dean Michael Chen had given me an opportunity to come in the middle of the school year, you don't just wait, you just jump and run. And so I've truly found my new home, and now I have so many more amazing opportunities for what we can continue to develop within hospitality. I'm working on executive education now, and so working with our industry partners that need training, so we can do online self-paced training courses, we can do in-person workshop seminars. You can come to our beautiful campus in Biscayne Bay, or we can go to you if that's a desire. I also still have the opportunity to teach classes and support the rest of my colleagues on campus with what they need. And so that's where we're at.
Nice.
So hopefully that gives you a good basis.
For sure. So a lot of things have changed in this industry. Like, I've seen this industry like take a cup turns like 3 or 4 times over. Like pre-COVID, post-COVID. Like, what are some of the biggest changes you have seen pre-COVID and post-COVID? Probably maybe the top 3 so far.
I would say, I would think training of staff and team members, right? So we had it kind of goes hand in hand, right? We've had a labor shortage going into COVID.
Correct.
Okay. Coming out of COVID, we still have a labor shortage.
Correct.
And in reality, it's only gotten worse. We've had a lot of folks that have decided to retire early, unintended, right? Because they needed to survive with their family. So they either retired early or they went to another industry. And in doing so, we haven't necessarily seen those folks come back. And so that created a gap, because then we didn't necessarily have a lot of knowledge base, because we lost a lot of that knowledge base. So then we've got young folks that are starting or have been there, and they're being promoted really quickly.
Correct.
But don't have that foundation or that knowledge. You know, a lot of times we like to say you got to pay your dues, right? Some of these young folks didn't really pay their dues, and it's not that by any means it is not meant to be a method of torture the way some of them may take it, you know, but it's, you need that experience to be able to handle and adapt and quickly pivot to whatever's happening. And so from that pivoting standpoint, I think one of the other pieces that we've seen is that if an individual was so niche to only being able to do one specific task within a hotel, you were not necessarily brought in or returned to property right away.
Correct.
Okay. And so I think that really, now coming out of COVID, one of the things I try and make sure that we have is a sense of our employees are more generalists as opposed to so specific. In my estimation, if you look at the cycle of evolution and what have you, there's going to be another COVID-19 pandemic of some way, shape, form. It's inevitable. I worked in the hotels, and it was SARS, and it was swine, and it was the bird flu, and they were, of course, not nearly.
Mad cow.
Yeah, I mean, it was not nearly as significant or severe as what we were suffering through with COVID, but you have to be more mindful and being prepared. And so I think now those that have the ability to adapt and be flexible and pivot to whatever is needed, whether it be jumping in at the front desk, whether it be being a lobby attendant, helping to clean, going out and doing sales calls. There's so many opportunities. And so that really kind of brings me back to, I rooted myself very solidly in knowing all these different positions from the onset as I went up in my career, so that when somebody needs something, I have that behind me to pull back on my experience. And I think that's what sometimes our youthful generation just likes, that immediate satisfaction that they've checked it off, gotten to that next box, but not really practiced. And so I would say those are probably the biggest pieces. I think the other thing is we are, in most states, the first, second, if not third industry in an individual state as hospitality, travel and tourism. We don't do a very good job of telling that story. And we don't do a very good job at telling that story and sharing our amazing experiences and how awesome this industry is with individuals that are young and coming up. And so when I do recruiting in the colleges now, because I've been doing a lot of that, I'm finding they don't even understand the word hospitality. They don't know what it is. And so we have to break that down. You know, years ago, it used to be in college programs like my degree, it was hotel restaurant management. That was clear. I was going to focus in hotels or restaurants or both. And we found that limiting in academia and the industry. And we said, no, that's too limiting. We need to be broader because we are the hospitality industry. So we put hospitality, and that's how we label it. And everyone's like, well, it's hospitality.
Yeah, I heard Jim saying they're in the hospitality. I'm like, huh? Like, you're a fitness center or hospitality? Okay, that's new. That's new.
Well, from that service standpoint, in some ends, they do. I mean, there's so many service adjacent opportunities that fall into that as well. And so, I think really just trying to get what that word is out, and our industry folks need to work more collaboratively with academics, because we're the boots on the ground, and we're closer to the younger folks. But support us in higher education, in engaging in that process, whether it be coming to classes. And I've even gotten into recruiting into the middle schools now, because if I can do that earlier, a lot of what's happening in the high schools will offer CTE programs. Okay, those particular programs will give the continuing technical education. So as opposed to it being a technical school, because many students won't do that, you can pick a program that you're interested in to study when you're in high school and get some of that foundation. In some locations, you can even do something that's called dual enrollment. And so you can take your high school classes if you're exceeding and you meet the expectations of the local school, and you can also take college classes. In some instance, you may actually even complete an entire associate degree by the time you graduate high school as well.
That's a beautiful program.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
and look at the cost savings, But if I don't start reaching to you in middle school when you are making your selections when you're a freshman, you don't know what to select. And our industry is amazing. I love the fact that we can travel. And so a lot of people see it as travel and cooking. And for better or worse, the Food Network has given us some elevation, but then it's kind of hurt us a little bit on that same time, because everybody thinks they're going to be a chef. But to that point, I would say we have to embrace that and let people know and understand, It's a great industry. You can meet a lot of people. You can do a lot of things, but it is a little bit of hard work. You're not going to get to not roll up your sleeves.
That is true, and I think for a lot of the newer students, when they first enroll, they're like, okay, I can do this. You know, I'm great with people. I love to talk. And then when they actually get on the field, they're like, okay, this is different from school. It's
Right.
a little different from school. Okay, this guest is they're not the friendlies as I thought they were going to be. You know, so that's my take when I get them out of school. They're like, man, this is pretty tough.
Right. And so from a lot of schools, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the students have an internship. We want to bring guest speakers into the classroom for those experiences so they can hear directly. I can tell my student something until literally I'm blue in the face. A guest speaker will come in, a friend of mine, and I don't prep my guest speakers to come in. They'll say, I've lived it. So they say the same things that I'm telling them. They'll say it and they'll be like, wow, so-and-so said this and I didn't realize. And I'm like, really? I've already said that, but okay, if you want to believe it from them instead of me, please, you know, in the end, that's what we want, is we want for them to believe that. So, but those are ways that industry can get involved, is being a guest speaker, coming to talk to them. And if you can't come in person, be willing to do it through Zoom so that people can connect. Offer a tour of your facility or your restaurant or your hotel. Have some of your managers while you're there talk to the rest of your team. Like, those micro opportunities, and you may not think about it, mean so much. Here at the High Tech Conference, we have 3 students from FIU here working, and they are supporting the conference. There's actually a total of 25 students altogether from 7 different universities helping to support registration, the information booth, the education sessions, and they literally have a schedule. In turn, they're given the opportunity to have a hotel room to stay here, and they get registration to the conference, and they get to explore it, see it, meet all these amazing people that are here.
Nice.
And those are small differences. A lot of times students will end up with jobs by the time they leave conferences, or internships.
Hell, if they're coming from your school, they probably just get hired on the spot. Like they don't even need to interview. You're hired. I already know.
Yes, we
because you guys have like some elite teachers over there. Like,
we have an amazing team of faculty members. I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that I have. I have a group of colleagues who are so dynamic in their own niche of the industry, and they are well versed. They are well researched, and collegiality, we get along so well. It's just so great to be a part of such an awesome team and really have such an amazing dean that is so supportive of each of us individually, but collectively as a group, so that we can advance what we're doing to support the students and in turn support the industry.
That's nice. Now, what are some of the other aspects that you're seeing, especially when it comes to ownership? Because I know you run into a lot of owners, and they have to tell you like what's really, really going on, like boots on the ground, like what they're experiencing and what they're going through.
So I think, you know, even still coming out of COVID, labor is probably still their biggest challenge and issue. I think now what's really coming around is the training level component. They don't necessarily have the time to invest in training. Most of your big brands are going to have training programs, but it's going to be a little bit more brand specific. It's going to be role specific. So we're also finding that not only are they looking for professional development opportunities, but individuals are looking to expand their own knowledge point, because maybe they want to go for a promotion and they're not quite ready. And so that's where I'm really working on executive education opportunities so that we can support the individuals within our industry as well and elevate that up. And that in turn helps the hotel operators and the rest of the business operators in succeeding. I would say the other piece that they're coming across is technology, and this is one of the reasons why we're here at High Tech from a technology standpoint. And for many decades, okay, hospitality technology has truly been something that has been an aspect where we're behind it. We are never at the forefront. We are always lagging. We want great things, our guests might want things, but then how do you adapt that and connect it and do it quickly? because there's an investment financially for whatever you're using for the infrastructure. I think a lot of times, sometimes we forget, if you're trying to put something into a guest room, you have to have however many guest rooms that you have. So if you're a 300 room hotel, you need 300 TVs, you need 300 whatever that you're putting into those rooms. And so that alone is a cost component that can be prohibitive.
Correct.
And so how do you scale these things? How do you make it so that it is a viable option to be able to put in? The other piece is that most times with our software programs and our hardware, for example, with our property management systems, we don't have a person on site as the technical person or the IT person.
Yes.
Okay? So when I started, I ended up by default having to become the MIS, the Management Information Systems person. I was lucky I had a chief engineer. That's probably how I ended up hooking up with him, and I married him, because all he would do is just like plug in the internet, and he'd be like, "It's all you," and I get the electric or the wires, and he'd walk away. But I then had to figure it out. And so I kind of joked, I had a presentation here this week at the conference, and I was serious, but joking around when we talk about vendors and interfacing. When I had a problem with something, the way it would interface with my property management system, I'd have to call the vendor. And so the property management system would say, "Nope, it's not us." And then I call the vendor, and the vendor would be like, "Nope, it's not us, it's your property management system." I'm like, can't you people just talk to one another? And so I think that's a significant pain point, and really from the vendors that I've been meeting and the people that are here, that's the piece that the industry is now trying to work better on solving. How can we integrate that component? And so when we think of the greater scope of technology and artificial intelligence, from artificial intelligence being the larger component, and so a lot of us now are the buzzwords of AI, and we think AI, but AI is much bigger than what we're thinking.
Yeah.
We're just used to right now generative AI. And so if you think of ChatGPT or Gemini, that's what most of us, their mindset thinks about for AI, but it's much bigger in terms of machine learning and the whole component and all of the analytics that go into that. So now this next stage of evolution is, how do we leverage these tools and technology to collect data? Because one of the things we do is we can collect data. We have a lot of data. We don't do anything with the data, or we don't know what to do with the data. And so now how can we leverage that data to be useful to exceed expectations, to eliminate mundane tasks? And so I don't mean eliminate employment jobs, because that's not what we're looking to do. We need to look at how can we cut out some basics. If you think of, a lot of times on a page you might put the FAQs so that people can read through those faster, right? Well, if you're fielding questions on those FAQs from a PBX standpoint at the front desk, is there a way that we can make that happen, streamline that, let the chat bot talk to you, make it sound human, and then when it can't answer questions because we've given it some guardrails, or it just doesn't know from the learning that it's done, okay, now we're going to then connect to the human and get those components.
I really can't say eliminating jobs is the key word or the key factor here, because I had seen people open hotels and they couldn't even get them staffed.
Yeah, right? and again, we still have a labor challenge. Yeah. So,
so if we were like to bring out a product that maybe eliminated the need for one more person that we couldn't even get filled in the first place, that. And
really what we want to be doing is a lot of times, especially hospitality is very labor intensive, right?
Correct.
And so in some level, I think a lot of the concern that we come across is we are a people pleasing, people serving business, and we don't want to eliminate that human touch. So for those that attended the High Tech Conference, the headline or keynote on Tuesday was my podcast partners, Anthony Melchior and Glenn Hausman, and that was the concept that they were trying to get across. Technology's been here.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence has been here since 1950s. This isn't just, wow, it's 2024 and it's here. It's been here. It's just now we're getting into it, and now we're realizing how can we leverage that. We had even talked about, we played a great game on the stage. I had an opportunity to get up on that stage with Anthony and Glenn, and we played the telephone game.
Yeah.
And you kind of joke. I mean, I brought 3 people from the audience up, and I'm like, so we're going to play a game from kindergarten, not telling them what they were going to do. And that's what it was. But one of the videos we had even shown was a video of a rotary telephone. Kids nowadays, like literally, they don't know how to make a phone call off a rotary phone. Like, well, what is that? Oh, you got to pick up the handset and you got to dial.
They're like, who would do this? I can't FaceTime with this.
But how are we communicating? How did we maneuver to get here today? You picked up the phone and you called me, So it's just the technology changes, but we have to adapt with that technology and learn from it. Mm-hmm. I did see my girlfriend, she's out on a cruise right now. And I had known that a lot of the cruise ships were going to go more towards mobile key access on cruise ships.
Okay.
I know a family friend had said to me, I don't want to have to carry my phone on the cruise ship. Like, I'm going to carry a small little camera. I want to disconnect on vacation. I'm like, okay, interesting. Now they shared the QR code when they get to the table. The menu on the cruise ship is no longer a menu. You have to pull up your phone. And so we've been talking about that, and even at the keynote session, and just, are you forcing the technology on people, or are you making it so that it's an option? And so when we look at the different generations that are out there, you're still serving 5 generations of people.
Correct.
Right? And so we'd like to think everybody has a smartphone.
No, my mom still has a flip phone. She'd be like, baby, how do you do this? Like, you can't deal with that phone,
Right,
Mom.
Right. And so, to that point, what are we we're forcing it on people. Mm-hmm. Are they going to use your services next time? How are they going to, what's your backup? If your menu is only a QR code, are you able to allow someone to pick something from the menu? Do you have a paper copy?
There you go.
And so we're still going to be in a transition for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And we need to meet people with where they're at and what they are looking for. Nice.
I was looking at the data when it came to things like revenue. Mm-hmm. And they're showing that the revenues are much higher compared to pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. From what you're seeing, what are some of the drivers when it comes to increasing revenue?
Well, I think I don't like to use the phrase revenge travel. Okay, but people learned that we are a people world, right? And so by staying inside, staying to yourself, people needed to get back out. They needed to do that. And so conferences are back. There was time where
definitely
we thought,
back here.
That was not going to be the case. I think this conference has got roughly about 5,000 or so people at it. I was at the AHOA conference in March with you, and that conference had, I think it was about 6,000 or so people. So conferences are back. And so, that drives up the rate. If I'm not mistaken, at some point, I think there were 13 hotels in the room block for this convention.
Yeah. And I missed all of them.
And so did I. And so, I was lucky to find something outside of that at an affordable price to be able to travel with. But I think the other piece from a revenue strategy is in 2008, 2009, we lived through the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And I was making that pivot into education at the time full time. But what we were learning at that point in time, or shortly thereafter, I should say, is back then we discounted because we thought discounting was going to drive the demand.
Correct.
And that's not what happened. We just depleted.
Lost a lot of money.
Yeah, we just left all this money on the table is really what it came down to. And so that was, I think, one of the big pieces that we learned going into COVID and saying, we're not going to cut our price. There's a value to what it costs to do this job. This is what it is. We need to stay steady to that, but can we increase our value? Can we provide an additional service to go to that instead of cutting what our rates are and being competitive? And so I think people really learned that into this pandemic, and that made that difference. And so then when travel started to resume, now you were even going higher because that demand was higher.
Wow. One of the things I always thought was interesting is how people are able to just retain their employees and employee retention. Like, what are some of the things? Because I know, especially with your background, you probably had a lot of different job offers from corporate and everything else. But you chose to stick to your guns and say, I'm going to stay where I'm at. I love my job. I love what I do.
Culture. I think the number one thing companies need to look at is the culture of their business and their organization and how they treat people. I firmly believe in the mentality that you don't leave a bad job, you leave a bad boss. And so it's really individuals that make that differential for whether you stay or whether you go. And if you want to embark a great culture, it is going to start from the top up, and it's going to trickle down. And the rest of your entire team is going to embrace and embody that. And so that company that I had mentioned, my first management company in hotels, which was Bristol Hotels, that's where many of us took that core foundation and philosophy from our core values of that culture from the top up. We carried our little cards in our pockets of our suit jackets, and we lived it, we breathed it. And one of the challenges that many of the management companies then have is that scalability when you acquire more properties and you add them into your portfolio, to maintain that sense of culture and carry it through the rest of the new properties. That's a hard challenge to be able to do.
Yes, it is.
And so for me, it's always going to be culture that you've got to embrace. I'm a big proponent of knowing all my employees' names, knowing something about my employees. I'm walking the floors. I'm checking in with folks to see how they're doing, what else they need to do their job, so that I'm not abandoning them in that role. To me, that's really important. I've had employees that have worked for me and traveled with me from one hotel to another hotel because they embraced the culture that we were able to create. And so I think that's probably the most important thing. You've also got to look at how are you treating your employees, and what are not just the pay. You need to be competitive with your pay because that's a baseline. But a lot of what we look at is more than just that. It's how they're being treated. What are the other benefits? Is there a retirement option? Is there health and wellness? Is there flexibility or adaptability to their scheduling? We know that it's a challenge sometimes. There are positions you have to be there for. You can't check someone in and not be at the front desk. Like, the room has to be clean. Someone's got to be there to do it. The food's got to come out of the kitchen. And unless you really want to embrace technology and have robots do it, you know, you got to have some of the people in here. So from that vantage point, finding ways to be adaptable to their schedule. Is it, I have always appreciated making sure that employees had 2 days off and really kept them back to back, as opposed to trying to split them. You need that time to recharge. This can be a really grueling industry, and our guests and customers, and I think even over time have continued to become more challenging because their demands and expectations, almost to a default, right? We've given good service, and then if we fall short of that service, they're going to get frustrated, and they're like, why aren't you giving me what I need? And so that's another tough, challenging aspect that we've got to look at. So it really goes back to culture. Like, if you've got that, I think you're going to keep people that are there.
I the scheduling thing is actually what hit home for me, because I had an employee and her son was doing terrible in school, and she said, I may need to quit because I can't work. I can't work like this anymore. So what I ended up doing was I said, we're gonna have you work 3 days a week.
Okay.
We're gonna give you 4 days off, and you're still gonna do 40 hours. So I scheduled her for 2 doubles and 1 regular shift. She got her 40 hours. She worked 3 days a week, and she was gold. Her son started proving to school again because she was there. She said, help me with homework.
And so when you have an employee that you can find a way to make it work, that sense of confidence in you and that trust in a company to say, they've got me, they'll help me get through this hurdle, they're more willing and adaptable. If I have the ability to go take care of, my husband or my son in something that they need and pivot my schedule, I'm probably gonna work harder for you than if you gave me that level of resistance, because I appreciate the fact that I can be adaptable and flexible. I think the other opportunity that comes around is, what can we do from a professional development standpoint? How can we support someone so that either they get ready for that next level, they are able to be promoted, but we also sit down and, what is that plan? Yeah. What's that one-on-one that we're going to do? What's that professional development plan that we're going to put together so that you're going to want to succeed to that next level? How can I retain you and keep you and advance you and not let you get bored and go somewhere else? And in the same token, I've had employees where there was not an opportunity for them to continue to promote themselves or be promoted anymore. There was going to be that cap for that location. How could we get them ready for what they really wanted to do? Because if there was an opportunity, this is a very small industry. Correct. So if there's an opportunity for me to get them back later on or get them back at a different company, I'm going to do that.
That's right.
And so investing in people, I think, is what I find important.
Nice. Well, that's all the questions that I had for today. How can everybody get in touch with you?
Fantastic. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at FIU. I'm at Bagnera at FIU.edu. Or you can tune in and watch me on No Vacancy Live, or just listen for Dr. Producer Suzanne, and you'll be sure to find me.
Listen, she's always and I don't think it's on purpose, but she's always a speaker on No Vacancy Live. I'm not sure how that happens, but like, hey, this person was scheduled, but you know what? Forget that. We're going to throw in Suzanne because she has the audience. So,
you know what's great is that if you ever asked me years ago, would I do anything like this? I'd be like, oh no. Public speaking or talking that way, or the level of prep. I had a vice president of admissions who said, well, there's the Suzanne Markham Bagnera way of preparing. It was, I would prepare, and I have so many notebooks at my house of notes that I would take in my research, because I really wanted to make sure that I was well versed and prepared. Yeah. And in the end, I am blessed to have two people like Anthony and Glenn in my corner, because they've helped give me the confidence that I actually know it and I'm okay with it. And so I don't go off of scripts and questions, and I can do it and I love it. And I think in the end, I've got the passion for our industry. And if I can share that story and if I can inspire somebody else, I've done my job and I am pleased for the day.
That's the number one secret, because when you're in the mix, you already know what seasoning you're looking to put in it. So you already know the questions just like that, because you have those same issues every day.
And listen, I think on some level, I've been teaching classes now for 20 something years. Don't want to admit that now, but
well, you don't look it, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. But my students will ask me questions all the time, and I don't necessarily have every answer, because I don't have every answer. But what do I have? I have extensive experience in my background that I can pull from. And so, while I may not have the exact answer to, well, this is exactly how I would do this, well, this is probably how I would handle the situation, because in a similar situation, this is what I did, or this is how I handled that. And so learn from what I've had in the past to help predict the future.
Nice. Well, listen, thank you for being on the show. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy that we finally had the opportunity to connect, and see one another.
Yeah, but listen, thank you for watching us. Thank you for joining us another episode. And as always, this is Bruce Jordan, the Michael Jordan Hotels, signing out. This episode was brought to you by the Hotel Revenue Bible, the #1 hotel revenue book that has ever been written. It includes revenue management, digital ads, social media marketing, sales, catering, F&B, and more. Grab your copy today at hotelrevenuebible.com.